guys in. In 3, 2, 1.
Man, we are gathering at the gathering spot.
I appreciate you.
Such a beautiful thing. You know, I'm Adele Anderson. You know, we're here. Acknowledgement Magazine. You know, very, very special conversation here. You know, very, very special conversation. You know, Ryan Wilson. You know, co-founder, CEO, Gathering Spot, amazing place. You know, if you don't know about it, you're supposed to know about it. Very, very unique overall model. It's like I want to start there, man. Just you know, just for a quick, you know, snapshot for those who aren't familiar with the Gathering Spot, the what it is and even the why.
Yeah, so first I appreciate you. And yeah, TGS, look, there's two ways to understand what we're doing here. The first way is through space. So we have physical locations where people come together, right? So there's event space, restaurant and bar space, and workspace. The thing though that I'm working on every single day and that our team is working on is all about community and connectivity, networking, relationship building. That's really what the business is at the end of the day. Youngest member is 21, oldest member is 91. So we spend our days, again, connecting the dots between folks that ordinarily wouldn't have met.
Now, the cool thing that I can appreciate, man, it's like, man, I've always really appreciated entrepreneurs, you know, ones that just went out there and got it, and especially the ones that saw something that others didn't see, right? So I can't imagine what it must have been like, you know, for you guys in the beginning, saying like, hey, this is the business that we want to do, you know, between, you know, yourself, you know, TK, you know, Peterson, your partner. Was it one of those things where it's like, okay, this is something that we have to do as opposed to something that was just missing in the marketplace?
Yeah, we didn't approach it like this was some business case study, right? We had an idea and we're talking about it every day, right? And I think that the best businesses are born out of a real passion for trying to solve a problem. So that's what we were doing. I mean, we were in our, I was gonna say mid-20s, honestly, we were early 20s when this whole thing started. And it was, again, every day just trying to figure out how could we make the idea that was in our head a reality. We weren't, it wasn't overly scientific. We didn't make it like a process where, you know, we were looking at all the things that could go wrong. It was really trying to figure out, well, you know, what happens if it goes right.
Absolutely, and now you know, found yourself in a space to where, man, it's like the Gathering Spot has become the barbershop on steroids, you know, the beauty salon on steroids as far as conversation, you know, the church, the club, it's like all of these different elements, you know, that we love about, you know, being a community, you know, and connected with one another. Like at what point, you know, did it go from like, man, you know, we kind of sort of have an idea of what we want to do till it started to sort of take its own form, till you start to see like, ooh, this is something that's really, really different?
I think this is an important point, right? Because people think that businesses or brands are created overnight, and they're really created at night, right? It's a bunch of days. We've been doing this now 10 years, right? From the initial kind of concept. We opened about 8 years ago. So, I mean, how TGS has grown is just through steady taking steps, right, along the way. It wasn't a thing where after a year we were, I mean, it just moves, right, over time. And I'm grateful for that journey, right, because, again, it's easy to think that these things just pop up, but it's a steady climb that really gets you there.
And the crazy thing, you were quote unquote supposed to just be somewhere, you know, just executing a career based on this law degree, you know, a specific type of lane. I'm pretty sure, obviously, you're using a lot of the, you know, skill sets, experiences.
I tell myself that, I don't know, I mean, the good thing about being an entrepreneur is that you're sourcing from all over, right? So it's the combined experiences that you had throughout the course of your life that really lend themselves to what you do every single day. So I'm borrowing as much from law school as I am growing up in the church as I am the schools that I attended. Like all of that is a part of the mix, which I'm grateful for, right? I mean, the best businesses, they should be at least inspired by what you're passionate about. I try to lend the things that I've been fortunate to be exposed to over the years to the business on a daily basis.
And I'm, just even going back to just, conceptually, just building this thing at night. You guys just sort of going back and forth with the idea of what could possibly be. You have a pretty good idea now of what, the culture is that you guys have created. Just talk about that process, for those that, are thinking about making the jump, when it comes to, just starting something, especially start something new that is non-traditional. Like at one point, did you guys really start to feel as if, the culture was really, really defined? And what were some of those key elements that y'all had up front? And what were some of the other ones that, started to come about as you guys continued to go through the motions?
Look, I think in business, the thing has to evolve, right? So you have to constantly be looking at what's the next thing going to be. Where we were when we started was just trying to create for ourselves. So we're two folks in our, again, mid-20s thinking about a social club. So what sort of environment would we want to be in? And our mind at that point, it was like, well, we want to be in a space where there's a lot of different types of people, where we can learn from who's around, that there's people from a variety of industries, and that we'll have the opportunity as entrepreneurs to really learn each and every day. As time goes on, I don't know if you ever move away from those core values or aspirations, but you do figure out new ways to get to them, right? So we weren't thinking about events in the way that we do now. I mean, we weren't thinking about restaurant in the way that we do. All of it has changed, but the thing that's most consistent are just the values that we started with, which is really simple here. We want to connect people.
Definitely that. And so it's just interesting. It's been pretty amazing just watching the evolution of it. I think the first time I stepped foot, in this space was 2016.
Wow, thank you. That's all.
That was a cool thing. So I remember coming over here, meeting with our mutual friend Jasmine Crow, and she was bringing me up to speed. We were just getting caught up on things that we were both working on, and she was telling me about this brand new idea of this tech space that she was about to get into with this new organization called Gooder that she was starting. And I'm sitting up here wrapping my mind around it, trying to understand it. At the same time, we're literally, sitting here at the restaurant, and I'm kind of looking around like, what the hell is this place? And so I'm grasping, the concept of what she was starting to create, what she was on the early stages of building. And I'm also looking at my environment. I'm like, yo, man, because what we've seen in terms of just even spaces, right? We've seen spaces as a space. We've seen, WeWork and those type of just shared workspaces. But I was just like, hold on, not only is this a community, but man, a community for people that look like us.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's sort of like, it's not like going to the Y, or just a community space in the sense to where everybody has access. Just walking off the street, it's like you have to have a level of commitment. It's like sort of like a gym membership. You have to,
Yeah, we want you to be intentional here, right? I mean, because what that helps to do over time, I appreciate you mentioning Jasmine. I mean, we've grown up in business, to a certain extent together. I mean, I just saw the Gooder at 7 years old, right? And I was there too, right? Watching the first pitch competitions and the first kind of parts of the tech stack come together. And now, right, that's one of the city's best known companies is Gooder. So you've got to be in spaces where that intentionality, right, is in the room, because to your point, you can go places where there are people around, but are you in a spot where you can really meet and build with people over time? When I study the folks that I really admire and I try to understand their business success, it's the relationships that they've had over years, right? They normally don't talk about meeting a person for the first time and doing a deal with them quickly, right? It's relationships that have been cultivated over sometimes decades that are the ones that are really paying dividends for them. So I'm taking that same approach, right? I haven't had the privilege to do a ton of work with Jasmine and Gooder. We've done different events and things over time, but who knows what the next chapter for both of us will look like, and the relationship that we've been able to build over the years will, I think, come into play, right? So you've got to be in environments that help to cultivate that.
Another thing that's really cool, man, when I talk to people about, brands, when I talk to people about, just doing different things to create a digital footprint, to establish a culture for what they're looking to do, something that's very key, in a lot of these different, big brands that we come to know and love are the faces of the brand. So when you talk about the gathering spot, it's like we see Ryan, we see TK, and it's been amazing, this past calendar year, in particular, just to see, the community that you built. Pretty much to say, hey man, we buying into y'all. Like, and when we don't feel as if, when we feel like as if something is kind of off, it's like, hey, what are we doing? Which is, it's again. Part of the ebbs and flows of the business, which led to you guys regaining your independence. We saw TK step out the picture and jump back into the picture. Like, what has that been like, man? I know that has to be like just an emotional thing for both of you. I was at the town hall where you guys talked about just bringing everything back together. But what does that feel like just to know, like, hey, these people rock with us. They rock with us so hard.
I mean, I appreciate that. Like, I think what folks are what they're expressing, right, is what they've built together, right? So we have a role to play in that, but I'm not at TGS every single moment. I'm not at every event. We've got clubs now across the country, right? So the club is maintained by the membership community. Again, we have a role to play in helping to lead and shape part of what happens, but like what people are trying to protect is not so much us like personally. Well, again, I appreciate the interest. It's what's been collectively built is the thing that we should be proud of, right? I mean, there's a lot of really good work that's come out of TGS, and it's humbling, right? I mean, you dream as an entrepreneur to get to a place where people will want to protect the brand because it means something to them. And I think that if there's anything that you would have seen over the last 12 to 16 months, is that, right? A community really talking about how important the thing that they have contributed to is to them and what they want to see happen moving forward. So we've never taken that lightly, and are back at work harder than we've ever been because we've got to do some real things to make sure that what they were talking about during the good and the bad times is protected. Last thing I'll say is that, like, entrepreneurship is a journey, and it's life, right? It's ups and downs. There are good chapters and bad. There's winning seasons and losing ones. So I try to take that approach to my work every single day. It can't always be up, right? You won't know. You don't know when you're gonna have. You won't really be able to define what a good year is if you don't know what a bad one was, right? So. I look at the peaks and the valleys as a part of the process and try to weather the storms as best I can.
Yeah, that's the cool thing, man. And you definitely being super humble, but it's all good. People love you guys, right? So people love you guys. And that's I appreciate that seriously, but like, I think that the mistake that any entrepreneur can make, right, is getting to a place where you just can get lost in the sauce. At the end of the day, my job is to drive value, right, for folks every single day, and that if I wake up and start to believe that this experience is about me and not about you, well, that, like, one, I'm wrong, but two, the thing that we're trying to build, like, that thing won't be able to exist in its greatest form, right? So again, I receive that, but like, it isn't for me the thing that I think is most important to pay attention to. It's are you being a good steward of the work and the assignment that you have, and then from there, good things should happen if you are. But I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs get to a place where they think that the business is them. And I haven't ever seen a good end to most of those stories. I agree. I've definitely seen it. I think where things, go wrong is when you start to identify like, hey, I did this and people are rocking with me, and if I leave, everyone's gonna leave. Which in many senses it may be the reality. At the same time, I've worked in the lifestyle space my whole career.
Yeah.
I'm in this thing, this is year 30.
Mm.
For me, working in the lifestyle
Yeah.
space, whether it's, from a media standpoint, doing lifestyle magazines, music, television, film, community education. So it's like I get paid to live, right? So
That's
as long as I'm being my authentic self,
Yeah.
I also have to learn how to, take the flowers when they come. Because
Yeah.
the thing is, as long as you guys are being your authentic, genuine self, and I think that's one of the cool things that people appreciate over this last calendar year in particular, is that, people responded when they, saw or felt as if things weren't cool. Like I said, I love the fact that the way that y'all built this community, you are all looking to be as transparent as possible. Obviously you're not, walking around, you're not doing surveillance and, showcase every single intricate detail, but I think you guys do an amazing job. You giving weekly updates on kind of sort of what's going on, the town halls, and just knowing when it's necessary to do a town hall to talk about some
Yeah.
house business, right? The fact that, the town hall, when you guys talked about, hey, we're back 100% independent. TK talked about like, man, Ryan called me and was like, come back. And I was like, I don't think so. No, I'm not coming back. Then he called me back again and I thought about it, right? So it's like loving to hear like those genuine, real conversations, and the fact that, when things weren't going as well, last summer, and, a quarter of the membership left. You guys sharing that, right? Very important.
I mean, for us at this point, it's like, what would be the point in not being very direct? We don't have anything to be ashamed of, right? Like there's been, this thing has already surpassed what we thought it could be and do, right? And so if we're going to still be at it and still think that there's potential for it to continue to grow and evolve, then why not just be direct about what's happening, right? I mean, folks invest in this experience. It's dollars that they work hard for, and so we see it as a responsibility to be as candid as we can about what it is that they're investing in. But I mean, again, going back to this view about how you think about how you show up each day as an entrepreneur. I mean, if you look at it through the eyes of an artist, right? An artist is as good as the last project that they put out to a certain extent, right? And as soon as you believe that your last project is the only thing that you ever have to create, well, like we know those examples, right? And we stop talking about those artists because culture moves, lifestyle moves, right? So you can't get stuck, right? You've got to always be thinking about how is the thing going to evolve and change, and know that like it is about, again, how you serve people in that, and not that you, right? Because you might have done something that was fantastic a decade ago, but there are people right now that need solutions for right now. So are you building things for them that are helpful? If not, you'll find yourself being in the unfortunate part of the business cycle or the artist cycle where you decline. So I'm scared of that more than I care about any of the other parts of this. So that's where I'm putting all my focus.
I'm gonna tell you something. Leaving out of that town hall, the thing that the vibe and the energy that I felt, not only was the excitement of like, oh man, what's to come next, and it's like, the boys are back in town, and like what you guys rolled out, information on a lot of the things that are, to come, and it really gave me like Steve Jobs vibes, because at one point in time, Steve Jobs was there at Apple. At some point, he kind of like found his way outside of Apple, and then when we came back, it was just like, okay, we about to go hard, and it's like that's the energy it felt like with you guys. So talk about that excitement, and do you feel as if it's sort of like rebooting or starting over again? Is it the same energy like when y'all first started?
Yeah, no, this is a rebuild. This is a total rebuild from top to bottom, right? And the thing is like there's a foundation there, right? But again, if you use the analogy of like your last album, like okay, right, we had a good project. We had two, right? But it's right now, and so are we gonna bring something in 2024 that's exciting for folks? Yes or no? And you gotta get committed. That's what the greats do, right? They figure out how to go back into the lab, go back in the studio, and come with some more work that will inspire folks, right? And you've got to go at that with intensity. You can't be in the studio with the, oh no, I make great records because that's what I do. You got to have the energy like you did when no one had heard your music before. And I'm back there. I'm back in that mode. I feel like there's a lot to prove, and a lot of things that have been said and assumed about what can happen in this next chapter. And like, okay, we operate kind of best in this mode.
Let me ask you this: how do you guys ride the line and determine like the difference between, hey, we're going to do something event-wise, or creating different experiences based on things that are definitely popular, right? Things that we need that's popular, and it's like, all right, cool, let's go ahead and also be a part of that, movement. But also, what's important that you may not necessarily off the top, making it a point to say, hey, y'all do understand DEI is under attack, and we really need to have a conversation. Y'all do understand that this whole Ariel Simone thing is a really big deal. They're trying to shut her down for being intentional about creating funding for black women who normally almost get no funding, from major backers. Like, how do you guys determine, like, okay, cool, shiny stuff, this is something y'all really, really, really need to know?
I mean, our team talks about it, right? But we're also, we're living it each day, right? And so we're able to reflect on what are the things that are exciting to us, what are we talking about most, both kind of here from a team or like from a work perspective, but also just like what's happening in our families and in our communities. And if it feels powerful enough that we need to engage it, we do, right? I mean, there's not some long, we don't have a rubric or we don't scorecard it. It just, if we feel like it's something that is important to us, we jump in, or if we feel like it's something that more people need to know about. Like if you look at the DEI conversation, our thesis was that like a lot of folks weren't fully paying attention to what was going on there. And so we filled a room with some experts in the community talking about what's happening, right? And that came from, again, conversation, but this thing has always been driven from our gut, right? Like we're not a large company and where we need to have a team that comes in with the research report and gives us a scout if this is actually something that resonates. We talk about it and then we move forward pretty quickly.
That being said, how much different is it, to have that freedom and flexibility? Because I get it, how a lot of companies, whether they start off, with major backers, which the more major backing you have, the more you have to sort of allow yourself to be open to their opinions. Even if they give you a pretty good amount of creative control. Even coming from a standpoint of where it's like, hey, you guys went up under the umbrella of a bigger company, and now came back to independence. Like, what were some of those lessons coming out of that from a standpoint of like, hey, we're back to being able to follow our gut fully, however we want to do it?
It's a lesson, but I guess something I also acknowledge is a privilege, right? This whole thing is powered by black folks, and because of that, we don't have to have the same sort of checks and balances that maybe some other organizations do because of other stakeholders that they may have that are a part of the organization. I mean, for us, we're trying to serve the community that supports us, right? And so that there's flexibility and power that comes in that. I don't spend a ton of time worrying about how anybody else is going to feel about the stuff that we're saying, because at the end of the day, I'm privileged to be able to say that the business is supported by the very people that make it up. I know that's a very basic and kind of sounds like a simple concept, but if you really look at a lot of organizations, they may be serving an audience that's different from how they're funded, right? And so that's where you see some of that tension come out, because you've got to make sure that your donors are okay, and you've got to make sure that the folks that you serve are okay by whatever it is that you're saying or doing. Here, those two things are in sync with each other, and that makes it easier to be able to move a little bit faster, because I'm not having to have two conversations, I'm having one.
Absolutely, and just to go back to, moving forward, some of the cool things that's to come. I know technology is definitely
Huge.
Something
Yeah.
that's huge for you guys. Expansion, just
Yeah.
really doing more in the other.
New app is on the way for us, but then I also think that, like, being in the community business, you have to figure out new ways to connect the community, right? And so that old directory model, I think, is dead, where you get the list and you've got to go search through the names and figure out how do we leverage what's happening from a tech perspective to make that data and that like the overall who's there, right? Make that information a lot more accessible and digestible, hopefully to accelerate the pace of conversations and introductions that are able to be made. So we're working really hard in that space. And then, yeah, growth. I mean, we'll build some new clubs. We've got 5 cities right now where there are membership communities and no spaces yet. Our original goal was to build the communities, but then build space. And right, so like we've got to go and do that. So those cities are New York, Chicago, Detroit, Houston, Charlotte. So if folks are interested in joining in those markets, know that I'm working really hard on making sure that you'll have a physical location to gather in soon.
And currently, physical location, Atlanta, DC,
LA, yeah. So 3 in, which is something that we're proud of, but our first business plan was never about 1 or 2 or 3, right? It was really looking at, even globally, how could we build a network of clubs across the country. And so that's what I intend to do until we get to that place.
I remember another one of the things that you guys talked about, which was very important also moving forward. As the technology comes, it's like, okay, that's one thing, but it's still extremely important to have people physically getting in rooms and gathering.
Yeah.
Since 2000, we've seen like not just 2000, since the pandemic, work from home. People just getting that much more comfortable. People just not wanting to go back to work.
Yeah.
Like, you guys obviously have a model in place to where people could see the benefit of coming outside. But even for, other businesses, why do you think, there's still a sweet spot for you guys? And what are some of the other things that, other businesses may want to consider as far as like just to help to build like a community within their business?
I mean, I think you've got to start with the research, right? So research is showing us that despite all of the ways for us to connect, this is the loneliest time in human existence, right? So like folks are disproportionately more lonely right now than at any other point that's been recorded. I love the tech that's being built. I do think it helps to facilitate amazing connections. But I look at all that technology as tools, right? Like, it's not the actual work. The work of relationship building still happens over dinner. It still happens at an event. It still happens while we are physically working with one another. And while there's time and place for everything, sometimes we can do some of those things virtually and leverage technology. At the end of the day, I think that there are some things that are undefeated, right? And one of them is going to be that, like, as human beings, we like to build and experience and have connection with people. We could have certainly done this online, right? And it would have been a conversation, right? But there's something different to being able to meet someone in person and have a conversation with them. So we're not going to exit that mode, right? I think that, again, you could become prisoners of the moment and think, oh no, everything's going digital, we're never going to see each other in person. But like, that just isn't the way that things actually play themselves out. Look at what the first things that folks were asking for coming out of the pandemic. They were all experience-based things. Like, we want to get back into places where we can see each other again, because the isolation of sitting in my apartment, sitting in my house, that doesn't work for me long term. And yes, right, like, I can Zoom and FaceTime you or whatever. That's not the same thing as being able to go to your family's house for Thanksgiving. You can't digitally show up at that experience. I think we agree on that, right? So if you believe that, then like that same principle honestly applies to who we are as people in every other context, right? You don't want to show up in every relationship that you have in your life virtually. You want to go and be able to sit at the table at some point.
Absolutely. And you wouldn't have these TGS babies if
Yeah, no, they're outside. There's real relationships that have been formed here, right? And like, again, some that maybe have been sparked online in some way, shape, or form, right? But they've been nurtured, I would argue, through people sharing some real time with each other.
No, I totally agree, and that's even with us when it came back and forth, we went back and forth with the idea of digital media platform, but I for one was pressing the idea like, man, we have to also do print. We have to have a print component. People still like to touch and feel.
I do. I agree with that. I do.
So yeah, I appreciate you guys or you making this time today to go ahead and just sit up and have a conversation, in person. One of the things I'm really curious of, man, like I love asking this question, like if you knew back then what you knew now, whether it's from a standpoint of entering your career path, if it's from a standpoint of like, man, you know what, when I talk to young, aspiring, whether it's entrepreneurs or people who are just going to school, like, man, these are some of the thoughts that I would share, or these are some of the things. Obviously, you don't want to, I could go back, I could do all this over again. It's like, we're here now because of the path we're on, but what are some of the things, if you knew back then what you do now, man?
I think that the things that feel like fairly random to you, or feel like things that like, you don't know why you're interested in them, I would pay attention to that thing. They're not random, right? It comes from somewhere. And that passion that you have, that thing that is like making you want to pursue whatever it is, right? You could take your talents in a lot of different directions, but there's something that's making you want to focus on that. You should pay attention to that, right? Because it isn't as random as probably what it feels. The rest of it, like, I wouldn't want to tell myself anything, right? I think that the urgency that comes with not knowing, right, with trying to figure it out, is important. That's the thing that makes the journey a journey, right? If I knew the map, I don't know, it's like knowing the results of a game before you watch it, right? Like, it's okay, right? But there's nothing like watching a game not knowing the outcome, right? And knowing that you're going through an experience, and like whatever happens, that like all of the things that led to the end of that process were important. But if I gave you the ending to the game and told you to go watch it, it's not as entertaining, right? And I can't live like that. I mean, for me, we're going to take this thing day by day. I don't know necessarily where tomorrow where that will take us, right? But I'm grateful that I have today. I'm hopeful that I have tomorrow, and that's how I'm going to stay kind of positioned.
Another thing we appreciate is you showing your beautiful family. Definitely always great to see that. Love to see when the babies come out. As well. For leaders, and just seeing these images is always important for us to see. Like, man, that the family dynamic can also work, because oftentimes for entrepreneurs it's like, man, I don't have time for that. I can't focus on that. You see a lot of just loneliness at the top.
Yeah, my kids are more important to me than anything. That's what you see. It's not. I'm not trying to overly. Folks would want to see every minute of what that is, but my kids are the most important thing that I have going. So when you see them, you're seeing just what's important to me. And yeah, I don't know. I guess from an example standpoint, that's not really my motivation. Everybody gets there in the way that they think is best for them, but it is important to me, especially where for a long time the only real thing that was like important to me was like being an entrepreneur, and being a husband and being a father. Those things are more important, and I think they should be, because at the end of the day, like, no one's going to write. Again, go read the obituaries of folks, right? They talk about who they were to their family and to their community, right? Like who they were as a person. They don't say, you know, worked 80 hours a week and sacrificed everything for the business. Maybe a couple examples out there. I don't want them to write that about me though.
Absolutely. Yeah, so as we wrap things up, man, so what here in this day, right now, where you are right now, like what's your typical routine? Obviously, your day fluctuates, you know, your week fluctuates just based on a lot going on. But what are some of your core things that you've developed as a routine that works for you to help you move forward throughout your days?
Well, the last couple of years, I've really prioritized my health, right? So most days I'm in the gym pretty early before any work. And then there's a decent chunk of just work, right? That's the majority of the day. I try to make it home for dinner and bedtime with my kids, a little bit more work, and then I get up and do it all over again, right? I mean, now inside of those work blocks, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens, but generally, right, the day is like most folks, right? Little family, decent amount of work, go back at it, right? I've added, again, that health component to it because I saw pretty directly what happens when that's not a priority. So that's really how my life is kind of structured.
But even with the work thing, it's like, I mean, that sounds easy, but are there any specific things that's helpful for you? I mean, do you have to have stuff on a whiteboard? You got Post-its everywhere? You got specific apps you run? You know,
Oh, no, so I'm old school in that way. I write stuff down. Actually, like, I mean, yesterday I have like a calendar for the entire year that I'm like handwriting on. And yes, it's in my phone. I can see it, but like for me, a lot of the process is still writing. There's whiteboards all over our office because that's the easiest place for me. But I don't know, those things change and evolve, right? Like I'm not a big, I think a lot of the business guru types are telling you what app and do whatever process makes the most sense for you and that helps you keep the information in front of you. And that's changed for me over time, right? I mean, I used to be a night owl, right? I would work all night long. That's evolved, right? Where now I'm up pretty early in the morning, right? I've changed the way that I try to get there, but as long as you're committed to figuring out what works for you, I think that's the most important thing.
Work-life balance, how do you unplug? Like, what are some of the things that you do to sort of just separate yourself from work?
That's a tough one. I don't look at it like that, to be honest with you. I mean, for me, it's more about what have you committed to and are you honoring those commitments. But the idea that like I go, you know, into a mode where I completely don't think about this or that, like when is that, right? I'm at work thinking about my family and I'm with my family thinking about work, if I'm being honest, right? And so it's about, again, being as present as you can be, doing the things that you said that you were going to do, but this idea that you can like turn off or turn on, right? Like some of the best ideas that I have are off, like whatever the main, you know, I'll be at a basketball game and be like, wow, that would be, you know, fun. So just like staying alert. There's nothing new under the sun. So like, I think we're all borrowing and staying in a mode where you can be anywhere and learning and thinking about, well, what happens if I like do this like that in this context for our business? Would that be helpful? I'm glad that I approach it that way rather than looking at it like, no, I'm at the airport right now and the airport has nothing to do with my job. So like, I'm not looking at anything here. I actually look at that experience and like, no, I'm at the airport and like, I'm flying one of the biggest companies in the world. Like, how do they approach customer service? How are they thinking about technology? How are they building their loyalty programs and thinking about how to incentivize folks? And like, is there anything that I can apply in this context to that one, right? Rather than being like, no, I'm on vacation, right? I'm on the plane. It just, I don't know. Again, I respect folks that look at it differently. But what works for me is just to constantly be sourcing from everywhere. And again, how I keep it all balanced is if I said I was going to show up for my daughter's dance class, then I go to my daughter's dance class. Right? So like that's my version of the balance. But like even there, I'm like, how do they check people in? And like I'm looking at every part of it because I might learn something while I'm there.
Right. What's on your playlist, man? You're a music guy. What's your thing? It's like you got like.
I'm increasingly into, I guess, what is old school hip hop now, right? I feel like I'm getting old, right?
Hold on. What do you consider old school hip hop?
Oh, so like actual old school hip hop, but like when I talk to folks who are a little bit younger than me now, stuff that like I'm playing albums that came out when I was in middle and high school. I'm a big Jay-Z fan. That whole era, right? Like from anything that came out like in the mid '90s to mid 2000s.
That's old school to you.
That's not the definition of old school hip hop, but it is to kids these days.
Right.
Kids, it's very funny watching some of my favorite artists like have kids, and their kids not know like I was talking to my cousin the other day, and we were talking about Lil Wayne, and he didn't. Like he knew no concept of mixtape Wheezy, no concept of the Carter. And so we start talking about like he can't even.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm called. It's not actual old school, but it's old school to somebody now.
Exactly, and I know it's hard to choose, because you guys have had so many amazing experiences, man. So
Yeah, don't ask me that.
I already know you. Already
Don't ask me that.
From LeBron's birthday party to Kyle just left here.
Yeah.
I mean, just tons and tons of events. It's like
I can't pick one. If please don't ask me that.
It's not even to pick one. What's been some of the ones though in the moment that felt like ooh?
It's a decent mix. I mean, yes. Recently the vice president was here. The vice president of the United States.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, but we've seen the top figures in our culture. Be here, right? And now to have done that over years, I mean, it's not just even like celebrity. It's like we started at the top of last year with Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project. That was one where it's like this is important to our community and will be important to our community for a long time, right? So like I look at moments now over again almost 8 years, and I'm just like, I've seen folks get elected here. Right? Like they've been physically here. The mayor of the city won while he was here. Right? We had election night here. It's hard, right? It's hard to pick a thing. It's just to be able to say that it's been a little political and a little small business and a lot of entertainment. It's been in a lot of different realms over the years. That's the part that I think is really cool.
Well, it's really cool, man. What? 8 years?
8 years.
12,000 plus members. Just last year alone with 51,000 members coming in and out of all these different spaces, man. Dude, it's exciting. It's exciting just to see the evolution. It's exciting to get a sense of feel of what's to come.
We're on the way.
Seeing you and TK back together again. It's a beautiful thing, man. So
I appreciate that, man. It's again, truly, it's not a me thing at this point. It's a we thing. Our team, right? Our team has been together a very long time, and being able to be back. Focused on what we're going to legitimately go be working on and doing moving forward. Like that's you don't get a chance to start over in a sense in most instances, and so we're able to kind of re-pour the foundation and build the house again. Like doing a remodel is it's a job, but it's one that I'm excited about.
Well, we're excited about this opportunity, this conversation, and the many opportunities, for acknowledgement to, be, a partner in telling these stories.
I appreciate you. Look, we grow together in this thing, so I'm happy to be a part of the small chapter of this journey because, again, over time, as things continue to scale, you gotta play the long game with folks, right? And it's easy to look at where TGS is now and say, but the folks that took that bet 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, right? We've been able to really grow something special together. I'm looking forward to kind of continuing on with that same thought process and tradition, right? We can do things together over the long run.
Well, look, man, so as we were building this, you guys were definitely on our wall in terms of we need to connect and build with them. So for us to be
I appreciate
at this
it.
moment, man, it's appreciated, man.
Appreciate
your
you.
time, brother. right. Ryan Wilson got him spot. We out. Appreciate you, man.
Thank y'all.